She was so beautiful, a sensual goddess that shouldn't have given you the time of day. As the sun rose it became clear why she did, and now you can't run. This event occurred a little over a year ago, and I still haven't been able to even begin to get over it. I'm a 22-year-old, my family and I had recently moved to a new town that was a fair amount more rural, and our new house was a large ranch-style house with a basement. I was home from college, and my parents had left for the week to celebrate their wedding anniversary with their friends who lived several hours away. Before I continue, I'll give a quick layout of the house so that you'll be able to imagine the setting a bit more clearly. There were 3 doors which led into the house. One on the front porch, a sliding glass door on the back porch, which did have a lock and floor-length curtains for privacy, and another door on the other side of the wall from my bedroom which led into the garage and basement. When you walk out of my bedroom and turn, you can see all the way across the house, kitchen, living room, dining area, to the door of my parents' bedroom and the stairs leading up from the basement. It had been a few days since my parents left, and I hadn't had any problems. They had sent me a couple messages on Facebook, letting me know that they had arrived to their friend's house safely, and were having a good time. The day had gone well, and I was sure to check that I'd locked all the doors of the house once the sun started to go down. It was about 11 p.m. and I was doing my nightly routine of laying in bed, and messing around on the computer, when I suddenly got this sinking feeling of dread. I felt as if I was being watched. It was summer and we didn't have air conditioning, so I had a large box fan in the window, blowing the cool night air into my stiflingly hot room. But once that feeling settled over me, I decided that I should remove the fan and close the window, just in case. Once removing the fan, shutting and locking the window, and pulling down the curtain, I felt a bit better. However, I still couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I lay back in bed and tried to continue what I was doing, though I didn't put my headphones back on. After a few minutes, I began to hear something that sounded like light scratching. I sat still in bed, listening to the sound, trying to pinpoint what it was and if I recognized it at all. Our new house, although relatively close in distance to our neighbors, had a fair amount of forest around it. So, I thought the scratching may have been an animal, or someone's dog that got loose and wanted to come inside. After a few minutes the scratching stopped, and everything returned to silence. So, I figured that I was probably right and that it must have been an animal. My relief was short-lived, as soon after the scratching stopped, from the other side of the wall I began to hear slow footsteps descending into the basement. This is when I knew I was completely frightened. There was no way I could get out of the house without walking past the basement stairs. We didn't have a house phone, and at the time I was in the process of getting a new cell phone because mine was broken beyond repair. I sat there for a few seconds wondering what the hell I should do. I knew that I would need to get out of the house as soon as possible, and that the more time I wasted the worse it would be for me. I contemplated popping the screen out of my bedroom window and jumping out, but it was far enough off the ground that there was a good chance I would end up getting hurt if I did. Not to mention that if I jumped out the window and hurt myself, I wouldn't be able to run for help, and I would be right next to the door that whoever was in my house had gone in through. So, I decided to very carefully and quietly open my door and peek out around the corner, and if the coast was clear, I would make a mad dash for the front door and sprint to my neighbor's house. I very slowly opened my bedroom door, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness of the house before creeping around the corner, and looking to see if I was safe to make a run for it. What I saw nearly made me vomit. As my eyes scanned the house, I noticed that something was off. I squinted hard as I looked over at the basement stairs, and was able to make out the shape of a man. What made it worse? He wasn't just standing at the top of the stairs, he was crawling up them like some kind of nightmare creature. I quickly backed into my room again, shutting and locking the door as quietly as I could. I didn't think he'd seen me, but there was no way that I was going to make a run for it now. My only choice was to pop the screen and jump out the window. As I was unlocking and opening my window, I heard the handle to my bedroom door turn. Once the man realized that it was locked, in a sickeningly sweet sing-song voice he cooed, "I know you're in there." This was followed by a loud cackle, and what I can only imagine was him throwing himself at full force against my door. I ripped the screen out of the window and flung myself out. I landed wrong on my right foot, and I was sure that I'd hurt my ankle, but at the time I couldn't think of anything other than getting as far away as possible. I got up and ran as fast as I could to my neighbor's house, knocking on their door in a panicked frenzy, and ringing the bell over and over. I looked over at my house as I was yelling for my neighbors to let me in, and I swear to God, I could see the man standing at my window, waving at me. My neighbors finally opened the door after what felt like forever, and I managed to explain well enough what was going on for them to let me in, and call the police. I stayed with them until the police arrived. The police searched my house, and found that the lock to the basement had been picked, and that the door to my bedroom was hanging off the hinges. They weren't able to find the man anywhere, and because I had only seen him for a split second in the dark, I couldn't provide them with a good description of him. Of course, I got into contact with my parents immediately and they hurried home. The police took my statement and searched the area for the man, but of course they came up with nothing. After this event, my parents and I were sure to add deadbolt locks to the door leading into the basement, and to the door leading out of the basement to the rest of the house. They also helped me pay to get a new phone. What really bothers me about all of this is that nothing was stolen. There wasn't even any evidence that the guy had looked through anything while he'd been in my house. So, psycho who broke into my house knowing that I was home, let's not meet again. For a bit of background, I'm a 17-year-old and live in a small house with my parents in Central Europe. The house has a driveway, which is separated from the street by a huge gate that has electrical remote, but can be opened by key as well. This may not seem relevant, but trust me, it is. Not that I live in a dangerous area, but there was and still is, a fairly large problem with gypsies, as most of them just don't seem to fit into normal society. For example, a few of them once attacked and tried to rob my brother, because they saw him buy something in the street market, and knew he had money on him. Luckily he was cautious and strong enough to fight them off. Anyway, I usually spend my evenings with my friend, either at his house or mine. The evening of this event I took the bus to my village from his and got off, just as usual. It was around 9 p.m., so it was pretty dark by this point. To get to my house I have to walk a few stairs from the bus stop, walk for a bit, cross a different street and walk down a hill. The whole way from the bus to my house takes about 5 minutes. So I walk down the stairs and turn to the left where there are some trash containers. Now I don't know if this is in other countries as well, but we have this separate containers for different kinds of trash like glass, paper etc. in most villages. In this particular place, there's no container for mixed trash, food or anything like that, just glass, paper and plastic. As I walk by them I look to my left, and see a gypsy man going through the garbage. We instantly lock eyes. He makes this crazy grin and kind of stops in the middle of his job. I walk away, not looking back until I hear glass breaking. He stood up and as I glared back, he grinned once again and started to walk towards me. I quickened my pace and crossed the street. As I start going down the hill I hear his footsteps get louder and louder, as he's getting closer. I'm scream at this moment but I hold it in. Looking back I should have, because it might have scared the man off. I almost see my house and stared to feel a bit relieved, but then I realize. The fucking gate. I only have two options, open it with a key, or ring the house bell and hope for the best. I try searching in my pockets, but keys are nowhere to be found. I decide to look back for a second, and find the man just a few meters behind. He's not grinning anymore, he seems more angry. I finally reach the gate, and ring the bell just about 10,000 times. When my father finally opens the main door, and asks me where have you been so long? In a funny, ironic way. I'm there, still behind the gate, but the man is now just about 2 meters away. I scream open. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And I start to scream. He sighs for a second, but then probably realizes what is wrong, and pushes the remote so quick I don't even notice. The gate starts opening just as the man passes by. I push myself through the gap between the gate and the fence. I finally feel safe, until I hear a faint whisper I will never forget, "You better run next time." I collapse at the door. Dad tries to follow the guy, but he stands no chance because the man is long gone. We didn't call the cops since I didn't remember the man that much, and I wouldn't be able to give them a description. It would have been no help. Ever since that I'm afraid of walking in the dark, and paranoid of someone watching me. I know my fear is unfounded, but I have no way of getting rid of it. I don't know if I actually want because it makes me aware of my surroundings more. Anyway. Creepy guy from the trash. Let's never, ever meet again. So this happened in 2013. This kid named Johnny moved in next door to me when he was around 12, and for lack of a better term this kid was pretty much a weird. I remember one time he fell on his skateboard, and didn't land hard at all and was crying his little heart out in my driveway when he was 18. By then I'm selling coke and molly pretty heavily and he's one of my best customers. By now, he's hanging with some pretty shady people which my parents obviously aren't fans of. My parents also didn't know I ever was selling anything, because I was pretty good at keeping it under wraps. Johnny was clearly a follower. He went from the skater, emo type to some wannabe thug, which he just wasn't built for. So my parents go to the Outer Banks, North Carolina every year for 2 weeks, and ask if I'll come stay at the house while they are gone. Which I was excited about because their house is much better than this little one-bedroom apartment I had at the time. So, everything was going fine at the house. There was quite a bit of drugs and alcohol going on. I was far from a saint back then. I'll never forget it. It was a Thursday night. My girl had left a few hours ago. I should say earlier, that day Johnny had seen me, and had asked for a front. I told him no, I have never fronted anyone, and in all honesty couldn't afford it. He didn't like that very much. We got in an argue, and I pretty much punked him in front of all his little friends. So by now it's like 2 in the morning, and I am obviously nowhere near tired because of all the coke and molly. I'm sitting in the dark watching Netflix in this side living room. My parents had in the downstairs, which I had opened a window going outside. I had paused the TV, and was on my phone texting, when I hear something. It's the screen of my window slowly being slid up. I know the sound. I had snuck in, and out of this house numerous times growing up. So I slowly get up and watch the window. I clearly see the screen moving very slowly up through the curtains. So I walk up to the window, and soon as I move the curtain at least 3 or 4 people scatter. I run out front, but they are booking it down the street. I knew it was Johnny Kid and his friends. I didn't see them, but I knew it was those shitheads. I didn't call the cops or nothing cause I wasn't exactly living on the right side of the law. So I just go back in, and lock everything up. The rest of the week goes smooth. I never told my parents about it. I also never seen Johnny again, called him a few times which he never answered. I even offered to front him, which was bullshit. I just wanted to see him. He didn't reply, which was all the more reason to know it was him, and he knew that I knew. So, like a month goes by, I am watching the news, and Johnny is on it for murder, which blows my mind. Him and 3 of his friends went out of town, broke into some old couple's home, beat them, tied them up and stabbed them. Then they burnt the house down after robbing it. They all ended up telling on each other, and he got sentenced to 35 years for testifying against his co-defendants. Makes me wonder, if I was asleep when they got in, what could have happened. Then I go to my parents' house later. I'll take pictures of his house, my house, and the window he almost got in. Also, after he got caught, his mother just abandoned the house, and the bank took it. Nobody really knows what happened to her, or where she went.